So today's class is on the science fiction film genre, and we had our discussion a bit about the science fiction, but along with science fiction we shall be speaking today specifically on fantasy fiction. Now fantasy fiction film is something that is not same as science fiction, rather it is a different genre, even when it goes very close to science fiction film genre. So where is the difference between science fiction film genre and fantasy fiction film genre? The most important difference between these two film genres that they have is that while in the case of science fiction film genre, it is specifically or somehow directly or indirectly it is close to scientific truth, scientific ideas, scientific assumptions that the director, after some intensive or extensive homework, he would like to come to a conclusion, or he actually going for a tentative path or a journey along with his ideas of imagination, his journey for the unknown. The science fiction film maker, director has a very tough task to complete. He ventures for the unknown while keeping the base, that is the science fiction base. Now if we think of that particular area, if we think of that particular concept in our discussion, then we find that fantasy is something just like it is an open space of imagination. Now fantasy fiction film or fantasy film in that sense is such a kind of a space that opens up different kind of conditions. It opens up different opportunities on the part of the filmmaker. Now the filmmaker does a very great job. What does he do? He includes so many things at a time. He includes magic, he includes myth, he includes something that is very wonderful event, he includes anything that is extraordinary in nature. So in that sense, fantasy film is that space to explore someone's capacity of imagination, and this capacity of imagination helps the director to go up to that very level where he can entertain the children, the adults, both, and everyone can find his or her own food for thought while watching the fantasy film. Now fantasy film is something that is not only entertaining, but also it helps to have that power of imagination, power of exploration, power of reaching that is apparently not reachable, power of going beyond the limit. Fantasy is of that particular psychological fulfillment of the desire that happens not only in the case of the filmmaker, but it happens also in the case of the audience as well. Audience to enjoy along with the filmmaker of those unfulfilled aspects of our human aspirations, of those unfulfilled areas and zone of our understanding. And he makes the whole process so brilliant, so extraordinary, that fantasy fiction actually helps going to that very forefront of our human capacity, of our human emotional outburst. Now when we are talking about fantasy fiction, we speak of so many characters, we speak of so many situations, we speak of so many considerations in which some of the characters and the heroes, they are basically not directly based on science. We referred to earlier in our discussion while talking about some Indian films. We need to mention right at this moment about specifically Krish is a character. Now Krish is a character in Indian context, and there is a film named Krish in which Krish can go anywhere, Krish can fly anywhere, and Krish can even fly over that high rises and then fight with the evil character and can do something good for the society. Now the very same kind of fantasy figures we often find in case of the Batman, in case of the Spider-Man, and those characters uplift our some of the hidden emotions, because probably we often have the same sort of desire of going over those high rises, doing some good for the society, to do something extraordinary, or that very hidden desire of being very popular among the common mass, doing some good job for the society, and at the same time earn a sort of popularity. These are all that work together in our fantastic experiences and the emotions. So fantasy film actually is the way of fulfilling some of the hidden corners of our human psyche. The very same sort of fulfillment we experience when you watch the films of Spider-Man, when you watch the films of Batman. They do some great causes of the society. And why not the very popular TV character that was serialized for a long time? I am speaking of Shaktiman here. Now Shaktiman is just like an emblem that was as it was screened on the television series for couple of years, and at the same time we find Shaktiman as a powerful figure who can do something great. And those many of you have the experience of watching the Shaktiman series, Shaktiman episodes. I think you can remember well how Shaktiman, in his power of moving in a very high speed, can go to any place at any time and can do some great job for the society and to do some extraordinary contribution to the society. Now this is of course a kind of a hidden desire for so many individuals. Now Shaktiman actually as it was presented could present the society in two bifurcated way, good in one hand and the evil on the other. So is it something that the director, is it something that the thinker actually wanted to present, that society is basically of these two types, and now it is up to your choice which way you are to go? Are you supporting the side of the good and you are actually far away from the evil? Now if you are of the side of good, then you have to go for continuous examinations. You have to be scrutinized for so many hurdles in the life, and you have to face so many struggles in your life. But it is the life that is worth living. Now you can also select the another kind of, this one is the evil side, and the evil is something that is full of lucrative offers. The evil can offer you something very enjoyable life, luxurious life with money, power, autonomy and so many things. But once you are side with the evil, there is always a prick of conscience. There is always a sense of failure. There is always a sense of disaster that one individual can experience. So this is how these fantasy films are, TV serials are actually something that help us to know some of those situations and conditions. in a very fantastical context, and in that situation some conditions are imposed in front of us, and the audience are often led to think which one to select, this one or that one. The audience is kept in a kind of indecision apparently. Now as you watch the film, as you watch the kind of TV serial, then gradually you come to the conclusion that which one is your choice. Another very popular fantasy tale that was serialized for a long time, and this TV program was very popular. This one is Sindbad. Now Sindbad actually, just like Shaktiman, he also goes to so many places. Now Sindbad can do some great contribution to the society, going to some unknown places, meeting some unknown lands, and experiencing some not possible in real life such kind of situations. Now Sindbad's journey is the desired journey of all individual. Now Sindbad's aspirations in life is something that every individual can aspire, but here lies the particular fulfillment, that something that we desire all is not to be achieved by all, is not something that we all can reach there, we all can fulfill of that kind of an emotional aspiration that we all carry within us. Now Sindbad's TV serial actually was so popular that it could help us to know that if the situations are so, then we can have such and such experiences. With the presence of mind, we can solve certain situations. So often this kind of situations, this kind of context can help the audience to think differently. This kind of context can ennoble the mind, inspiring the mind. It can make an average individual great, more it can make someone better than the average kind of a person. So this is something we have, the importance of fantasy films. Fantasy films is not only that talks about something very imaginary. It talks about some of our hidden desires, and those we find to get fulfilled over there. Fantasy film is something that is necessary for improving our capacity of thinking. It also helps us to know in what particular context we are in, and in what particular context we can go further, we can move further. So from that very angle, fantasy fictions are of course very, very important. Now if we think of the Aladdin, now Disney Hotstar, they have that Aladdin series or a particular movie on Aladdin, and in the Aladdin, if we look at, we see that a flying carpet is there, and with the flying carpet Aladdin is moving so many places, and then he can think of, he can watch, he can witness what is happening all around and how society is getting on. And with this magic carpet and that kind of lamp, with the help, that giant came out and the giant can fulfill everything. So it is something the common man's desire to have a giant just like Aladdin, and who, if I command to do something for me, and the Aladdin's giant will do, as we all aspire to have a giant like that, and who can solve all the problems in our life and can make our life great, make our life something very brilliant. Now this fantasy genre is something that is ever growing. Fantasy is, of course, is the result of some of the depression, some of the conditions that people are really suffering from. Fantasy fiction is, fantasy films are also the result of some of the critical situations that the individuals are passing through. And now fantasy is a kind of an escape. Fantasy fiction helps the individual to go out from the common everyday problems of the life and to get settled in a kind of a position from where they can think of getting relaxed of, or they can enjoy the life differently. So fantasy fiction is also a kind of an escape from the daily humdrum way of life. So this is how. And why not J.K. Rowling's the Harry Potter series? Now that school where magic is being taught, now Harry Potter was a student over there, and all those episodes that we find that Harry Potter is actually doing something. Magic is not something to apply to do for personal gain and to do some harm to the others. It's not like that. Magic can also be beneficial, and when someone is practicing magic, he can have some power. Magic means power, and that power every individual would like to have. But in spite of that power and the authority that we are aspiring in our everyday life, we can apply it for the good causes. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter, not as when it was written in the book format and when it is available in the film version, in both cases, it can make the mind of an individual. It may be a kind of a youth or adolescent young reader who is reading the Harry Potter series, and he can at the same time reading and at the same time watching the movies can think of, oh my God, it is a kind of a different genre, it's a different space, and that magic world can also not only enchant an individual, rather magic world can do something great for the society. So for that very angle, fantasy fiction has a long path, and it is the kind of a genre, fantasy film is the kind of a genre that is so popular since time immemorial. We can think of the 1903 films, we can think of the 1902 films, A Trip to the Moon, and since then, even today, we have so many numerous films that may be termed as the fantasy film. The Thief of Baghdad, Destiny, and so many films are over there. We just talked about the J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, which are made into film. We have the other films like Phantom, Tarzan of the Apes. So many animation fantasy films are also being made. So I must stop in today's class, and I would like to conclude that fantasy fiction is a overgrowing and always developing a kind of a genre that people's love for fantasy is ever growing. And we know that so long human civilization will be and life's everyday trouble will remain so long people will love, and they will love on fantasy films. Fantasy film will give them a kind of a open space. It's just like oxygen. Fantasy film can allow them to go and to reach to a different level of life. Thank you so much.